The purpose of this activity was to experience a question that could easily be a test question. And so the recommendation would be to try this question without any notes, except maybe having your AP Stats details page, this as a resource as you're going, because this is the document that kind of helps guide what do I even say when I'm asked a question. Okay, so you can read through the context here. Part A asks to help Kermit design his experiment to construct a diagram or a flow chart. So if you refer to your AP Stats details page, it says communicate the design of an experiment. There's some details to include. You want to have randomization labeled. If there's blocks, name your blocks, name your treatments, and name your response. Everything is in context. So that's the first part here. The second part, identify the explanatory and response variables in Kermit's experiment. Obviously, you can go read through it and try to find those, but there is a note here about explanatory and response variables on your details page. The thing to keep in mind is that you have to make sure that you communicate that it's a variable, that it can take on different values. So if you just describe a concept, like for example, in this experiment, the lighting level ends up being an explanatory variable. If you just say lighting as your explanatory variable, that's more of a concept. Like what makes it a variable? It says really clearly in the text that there's 3 levels of lighting, low, medium, and high. And so to communicate that it's a variable, you would say lighting level, low, medium, and high. So it's a detail, and that's why there's a reminder on your AP Stats details page. So that was part B. Part C, identify the treatments. So treatments are the things that are randomly assigned, and more specifically, a treatment is a specific condition in the experiment that is assigned to like an experimental unit. So blocks are not treatments. Keep that in mind. So chlorophyll level is not a treatment here because they are inherent in the plant, but we are going to randomly assign low, medium, and high lighting. So you can talk about that. The treatments are low lighting, medium lighting, high lighting. Why did Fozzie Bear wants to know why Kermit used a block design? It's kind of an open question, but there is a specific reason, and that also is on your AP Stats details page. Explain why a blocking variable was used. So there's something to read. The idea is you would block if you think that characteristic is going to have an effect on the response. And the thing that we haven't talked about a lot is that it's used to control or reduce variability. So in context here, the idea is just from a small background in biology that the level of chlorophyll in a plant likely would affect the plant's height. So if you could group plants by low chlorophyll and high chlorophyll levels, what you probably would find then is that there still is going to be differences due to lighting, but those differences are going to be a little bit less variable. Within the low chlorophyll block, the differences are going to be less than if you dumped all of them together, low chlorophyll and a high chlorophyll, into one pot. You're going to have all kinds of different plant heights, and it's going to be all jumbled up. So it kind of helps you control for or observe those differences in a more controlled way. So bottom line, you need to talk about variability in plant height, the response variable. So make sure that you talk about that. Finally, confounding. A confounding variable, that also is on your AP Stats details page. Establish that a variable is a confounding variable. There's things to talk about, and that was part of the class period today. So that's something you can look at. Make sure that you do that in this context. And then on the back, there's a grading rubric. Everything in AP Stats is graded as essentially correct, partially correct, or incorrect. And there's going to be criteria for these different responses. Sometimes it's just counting. Like, here's 4 criteria. You have to have all 4 to get an essentially correct response. 3 of the 4 will get you a partially correct response. And if you're missing more than one of these critical items, then it would be marked incorrect. So you can scroll through and mark each part is essentially correct, partially correct, and incorrect. So this is kind of your first chance to see what an AP Stats question might look like and how it's graded.